Welcome to Global View and to Los Angeles. It's such a pleasure to have you both here. The very famous Congressman Matt Gaetz, such an honor to have you here. And the very famous too, better half, Ginger, who everybody knows you, but nobody knows. I made my research about you. I know you are a powerhouse. You are very educated, smart, young, and conservative. Mm-hmm. So how odd you must feel in these times.
It's really an honor. Thank you for having us, and getting to know you both has been fantastic. So I'm looking forward to a great night.
Absolutely. So Matt and Ginger, I feel somehow we relate to you in many ways. I mean, you are a powerhouse political young couple, characters coming from some sort of his Fitzgerald novel, The Young and the Beautiful, and going to the top of the politics in the United States. But you had to face so much BS, scrutiny, and sabotage. So whoever want to start with that, I would like to dig into that because I think people should know.
I think what makes us special is that George and I made us out of our scandals with our wives. I mean, most people don't. I mean, it's one of the things they typically call. Usually, when you go through a scandal, you lose your job, your money, your wife, and sometimes your dog. And in this case, we made it out with our wives, which is pretty freaking awesome. It says a lot about the two of you, which is why this is going to be fun. What sabotage would you like to discuss first?
Let's hear it.
Well, tonight I broke the news of all these honeypots targeting my husband, and you know how people can be cruel on social media. So everybody is telling me, you deserve it. He cheated on you. And I said, wait a minute. I didn't even know him. And what kind of a loser are you to even enjoy the fact that eventually I was cheated on? Let's reset a little bit the ground. Are we talking about the inclusive liberals, Democrats who want to embrace everyone and everybody? Or these petty point fingers like, oh, you are a conservative. We are so happy you're suffering so bad and you deserve all the bad on earth.
I'd be like, shut the fuck up, Evelyn. Nobody would send a honeypot after your husband, Leroy. I would lean in.
Honey pots, plural.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's like okay. You want to take your shot because in the world of politics and global affairs and governance, it's nasty out there, and there are people whose profession it is to mess your world up. And we've experienced that from different lenses, but the honeypot tool seems to be an interesting one. Like, what kind of honeypot do you even send to a chick? What do you even call it? Is it a honeypot if we sent some sort of, I don't know, 6'5", blonde-haired, blue-eyed male gymnast your way to get some information out of you? What would you call it?
What would you exactly, girls? What would you call it? Let's flip it on the girls. What?
Well, I think it's different because for women, I mean, you can have delicious eye candy and it's still an enjoyable time. So I don't know that we have as much of a model because, I don't know. I don't see that, it doesn't.
So male spies listen to your feelings. They don't look good, but they are empathetic and want to talk to you about your relationship with your father.
Tell us, yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think we don't have this stereotype, and they use other tactics with us.
Yeah, I'd say maybe the overindulging and spoiling and making you feel,
exactly
like a princess, being, giving you the attention, the adoration, making you feel important, making you feel respected, which is very different than I think maybe the traditional.
Being a male spy sounds way harder. Under those terms, being a female spy, all you have to be is hot. Being a male spy, you have to do all that stuff.
You can't even be the 6'5" surfer guy, man. They already told you that's not what they're looking for.
No, they weed them out. They weren't even interested.
Did you see how quickly they just weed? They would have spotted him immediately, Matt.
We have higher standards than you guys.
Do you think most of the spies on the planet Earth today are men or women? They've got to be women, right?
That's a good one.
I think they're definitely women.
I agree with you.
Only because we don't have the issue of when we feel a certain way towards a man, our blood doesn't leave our head. I really think that's,
just travels from one to another, dear.
Yes, we are more difficult to get. We have to work so much more.
That's why we have the big head and...
We got here fast, really. We were so classy. We were talking about internet trolls and how corrupt and awful they must be that they have to go to the internet and make other people try and feel bad to make themselves feel big, and then.
But we have to explain how much more sophisticated women are than us primitives, and why we're more susceptible to this kind of stuff, Matt. But we escaped it. And how did you escape this, Matt? You had a very interesting situation.
Yeah, and in my particular case, the challenge I endured was unweaving the whole lies from the half-truths. I did not live the life of a monk. Ginger and I met when I was 37, 38 years old, something like that. And so before then, I'd been a single guy and had a pretty active social life. And so they take, some embarrassing things that any of us might endure in single life, and then they lash it to the awful and the criminal and the abjectly false. And so, that becomes laborious. But in my case, what I really benefited from was there was no batch of chicks showing up being like, let me tell you the story of how Matt Gaetz mistreated me. My grave sin was paying for shit, which, by the way, I didn't even know made me a bad guy. When I was first told the fact that I'd paid for dinners and hotel rooms and travel, and when somebody had a car insurance payment, I helped them out, that might make me a criminal, that did not even reconcile in my brain. And I am grateful, that I was raised right. I'm a very gentle and nurturing person by nature, even though most folks know me for ripping some witness's head off in Congress. I'm a very gentle person, and that came through in what people saw and how the allegations against me never were able to be presented in any court. I was never indicted. I was never sued. Nothing. I just had a bunch of people who didn't like my politics trying to use what was admittedly at times the swashbuckling lifestyle in a weaponized way against me.
Yeah, because you've had some of these infamous stories about some really shady parties, operations, even targeting members of Congress that have really compromised them. You were a single guy living a normal life, but for some reason they covered up some of the most dark secrets in Washington and just put on all these fake allegations against you. And my question to you is, why do you think you specifically were targeted and not spared like so many of these other people, including people like Swalwell, who had this infamous encounter with Fang, some of these other members of Congress, that people like Madison Cawthorn infamously went public with and said, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what I've seen with some of these crazy parties in Congress.
Yeah, I never really bought the Madison Cawthorn thing. I never did, because he was like, oh yeah, people are asking to show up and do a bunch of cocaine and have an orgy. Okay. And I don't really think it works in that order. Have you ever tried to shoot pool with a rope? I don't think people are doing a bunch of cocaine and having orgies in DC. But that was Madison's story. Who knows? The reason I think I was targeted is that I don't take the money. I was the only Republican in the Congress who took no lobbyist money and no PAC money. Mm-hmm. And for me, I felt like Neo in the Matrix, because when you don't have to say all the BS that the lobbyists and the PAC funders make you say, you can just say what you see and tell the truth about it and ask the questions you want to ask. And that became a repository of great power for me in Washington, not to get fancy titles or even make that many friends, but I gained the trust of so many millions of Americans who were like, yeah, that's actually what I would ask that general if I was in that person's shoes. And so much of Washington is a movie where the politicians are the actors and the lobbyists and the special interests are writing the scripts, and then the staff are kind of the production around that enterprise. And when you see through it and when you don't have to play the game, you become very dangerous to those folks. Now, admittedly, I could have lived my life in ways that would have never invited some of the particular criticism that I ended up enduring. But think about our country. These founding fathers were not perfect men. They reflected a rather perfect and specific and needed patriotism at the time. But I see people every day up in that town who are the best husbands, the best fathers, the deacons in their church. You would leave your keys with them. You would leave your checkbook with them. And when they get that voting card in their hand, they will sell you out. They will sell you out in a New York minute, because the pathology is that their own advancement is so virtuous that whatever they have to do to get on the Ways and Means Committee, to become a subcommittee chair, to become Speaker of the House, whatever they had to do to get that is justified because they are indeed so virtuous. Whereas I look at this country as indeed, blessed by the hand of God, but we also have flaws and frailties and our foibles and follies, and people who don't have everything perfect in their own life deserve representation too. And it'd be nice if that representation didn't sell them out. And I never did.
Absolutely. And one point about that, you always say you see the quality of a good husband by the smile on his woman's face, and you have a wonderful smile all the time. So what would you like to say to these people? What is the records you would like to set straight about the most outrageous lies they made about your husband?
I mean, it was so easy for me because we all know when you first meet a guy, you look at how they treat their mom. You look at how they treat the women in their life. You look at how they treat their, dearest friends, but especially their mother. And so if you see someone who is a mama's boy, and for those of you who don't know, Matt is a devout mama's boy. So the way he's always so nurturing to that relationship, to other relationships. I mean, his whole office was run by A-type female women who he would say, this is your expertise, and I'm, taking your word for this. And so the way that he respected them, you had that kind of mutual respect. There's so many women we know, I'm sure, in our life that would give anything to have just not be mansplained to again, or not be kind of pushed aside. And I will say, even though I'm very proud of my career, it is nothing compared to the successes he's had. Oh. And every time I've had even, a work call that might conflict with a flight, or had to go somewhere and needed some extra support, I didn't even have to ask. He was so there to support, so there to be, my continuing encourager. It was just so outrageous to think that he would be someone outside of those qualities and traits I saw day in and day out. So it was,
That's the reason to get married, is to be a cheerleader for your person.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're a very good cheerleader. You had to do it in very tough times, Simona.
Yes.
And it is, what binds us is to be able, we share in each other's trials, but we also share in each other's great joys. And so, we celebrate the small stuff. And also, when you're in the barrel, you got to understand that God doesn't give you more than you can handle.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
like you can handle it. And there are probably a lot of people who will watch this who will not be able to kind of associate with having foreign or domestic governments try to throw us in prison. But people might be going through a health issue, a marital issue, a financial issue. And there are times you feel like, I'm going to fall under the waves. And you really won't. You can handle it. And then the second thing is you can't let the process be the punishment. I see so many people in the various facets of my life who, when stuff sucks for them, they labor through every bit of the process. And even if they ultimately prevail, it has robbed them of a marriage, of a relationship with a parent, a child, a sibling. And that's not worth it. That's not worth it. So, we would do the stuff we would always do. We went on hikes. Our guilty pleasure is sometimes we watch the worst television, like my 600-pound life, Hoarders, The Office, CNN.
Nothing like at the end of a day where you think your day is bad. But then you see someone who does weigh 600 pounds, and you think, you know what? It's all in perspective. Okay.
And in Orders, I'm really a fan of Orders. Makes me feel better about.
Hoarders.
I love it. I love the
Is it
psychology.
weird that it relaxes me to watch their pathology? I don't know.
Listen, there's a reason that show's been successful, okay?
Right?
And I think that's it.
Yes.
Why does it relax you, George?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Is there a type? So I don't really like the animal hoarders because I get to feel so bad for the animal, ones. So I don't really like those as much. But there's sometimes like the collector ones.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
like
the collectors.
Those, I have
that.
8,000 pinball machines in my house, and I'm like, I need to know more about Theo.
it actually really helps us purge. And so when we're moving for different places, when we're thinking about should we keep this or not, and then you think about all those hoarders that have to keep
It's
on
so
to things,
It's
it
so
really helps.
It is so funny because actually you mentioned the show that we are addicted to, and we watch them with our bowl of pasta and wine, and we're just there. And we also got to the 600 pounds sisters.
Oh,
love them.
I love them too.
I love them.
They're from Kentucky, which is where my kinfolk are from. So I'd like to think
Oh,
we're
the
probably
sisters.
related. If
The
anybody's had any fun in
sisters.
Kentucky.
No. They're not 600 pounds. They're the 1,000
Oh,
pound
sorry,
sisters.
sorry, I forgot.
Maybe
Yes.
the 400.
Right, but one thing I noted about those chicks, they always had a man.
Yes.
I know so many eligible women in their from mid 20s to mid 30s, and they're like, I cannot find a man. I did everything right. I went and got the degree in school. I go to 3 spinning classes a week. I'm a totally eligible person, but every guy that I would potentially date is at home watching OnlyFans, smoking weed, and playing Grand Theft Auto. And yet these just absolute tubs. I've got every time one guy's out, there's another one pawing at the door like a cat in heat.
What the
To
hell?
get into
What
that.
the hell's happened to men today, Matt?
Oh, I think that we've disincentivized being a man to such an extent that many of them are becoming women.
Well, I do think I'm not going to take
And
all
ladies,
the blame, but I think the
Obviously,
Me
you're
Too-
lucky with both of us, but I mean,
We are. We are.
Exactly.
Very blessed. I know that's one thing I never have in common with my friends is that they'll get in their little circles and complain about their husbands doing things. And I think my husband would never do that.
Exactly.
Very blessed there. But I do think that things like the Me Too movement really didn't help men. Like the men I work with in business settings, it's not about whether or not you can perform well on a project or we want men on the team. It's like no, they're scared that if they message me at 2 a.m. about a project that's a client delivery, that it could be twisted into some crazy thing that ruins their career. So we've made it very difficult to kind of all get along and say we want to be treated equal, but not super equally because we're able to play this card. Luckily, I think Amber Heard showed the other side of that. Hopefully we'll get kind of the swing
Well, also,
back.
the digitizing of dating has changed
yeah.
this substantially. I mean, I've never had a dating profile of any kind online. Every woman I've ever met, you meet in, a friend of a friend, you meet at a bar, you meet at a concert, something like that. And now the ability for even the most mid dudes to just play a volume game on these apps I think reduces courtship and romance, and that's part of what makes a man. Like part of what makes a man is how do you make the approach and offer yourself as a potential suitor that might want to take someone on a date. Like how do you show up at someone's house and meet their dad? How do you win over a girl's friends who you want to talk good about you? That stuff has been highly diminished in the world of digital connection. And I know a lot of people who met online and are so happy. They got kids, they got great relationships, but it seems to be very reductive to me as a non-participant in the online game. But when I say that to people, particularly single women, they're like, what do you want me to do? I mean, that's where people are meeting. What am if I
I think they have to lower they share that they have to lower their own expectations because they're like, right, well
honey,
if
we're sure glad you've got that view. I'm just so glad you've got the view.
No,
that what women need to do is lower
absolutely
their
spoiled me.
expectations.
Our first date where I went to Florida, pulled out all the stops. One, never took out his phone, at all. Which
Beautiful.
is just, it's so huge this day and
Yes,
age.
it's wonderful.
Yeah, made sure the food
That's
was
actually
perfect.
I've never heard you reflect on that as a critical point.
Well,
It
how did
is.
you meet? How
It
did
is.
you meet? And I want to hear about this first date. This is really
Exactly.
cool.
You
tell our story.
Let me.
Okay,
But-
let's hear about it.
Her family were donors to me.
Oh, okay.
And so
And Trump.
And so I knew her brother, a very impressive and interesting individual, and I knew her mother. And then I went up to speak to her mother at Mar-a-Lago, and right behind her was this little gem. And I was thinking, well, this is not something you usually see rolling up to Mar-a-Lago. And so I asked her to be my date to Kimberly Guilfoyle's birthday party the next night. And she I guess, had a little pity on me that I
Well,
had
it
no
was
date.
so sweet because I just remember talking to him and thinking, he's so interesting. We had such a little spark and click. And yeah, he kind of made it seem like it'd be embarrassing if you didn't go to this thing without a date. Would I go? And my first response was, well, I only brought one good dress, so can I outfit repeat? And he was like, totally fine. This guy's already cool. This is great. And I showed up and had just the best time. He was, and one thing I also very much remember is I was wearing a backless dress, and everyone that night, touching your lower back as you're moving through doors. Matt, not at all. Just like very, very gentleman status.
Me too scared me. Me too. I'd have been pawing you like a bear in the woods.
I thought he was either gay or just wildly respectful.
But you knew I was not dressed well enough to be gay.
Yeah, he looked so dashing.
So-
I also make a joke that I may not have said yes if he was wearing a full tux, just like gorgeous, Mar-a-Lago by the pool tuxedo, asked if I would be his date, said I can outfit repeat, and then was so sweet when I didn't recognize someone that was very famous at the table. Everyone started laughing, and he, you look over at the guy that you think you might be embarrassing, and he just thought it was so cute and charming, absorbed all of my kind of embarrassment, and I just thought, this is so different than anything I've ever felt.
She asked Tucker Carlson what his show was about.
Well, I was,
I love that. This is
Girl,
so beautiful.
my background was
Yes.
in business, and so you have clients on
Of
both
course.
sides. You're in California,
Yeah.
so you can be a conservative, but it's not going to be necessarily the flag you're waving. Unlike Florida, which
Of course.
your your car doesn't get keyed if you have a Trump sticker.
If you don't
on.
have a "Don't Tread on Me" tattoo on you, you're not even a real Floridian.
But how beautiful is to having a still gentleman, well-dressed man, and that treats you right, and is not, cheapening up with all over talk you hear today by, the most of the men. Let's be realistic. But for some reason, being a gentleman is considered toxic masculinity, right? So,
What are the gentleman features you like most? Is it like opening the door? Is it the dress you mentioned? What do you picture with a gentleman?
the way it makes me feel. I want
Okay,
a man
well,
to make
that's
me
easy to
feel
replicate.
like a princess. He has to open the door. He has to pay for the dinner. He has to be,
Okay.
I don't like that 50-50 rule. It doesn't matter if I have millions in my bank account. I want a man to be a man. So it's really
By the way,
about codes.
You should not feel ashamed by that. Even the cave woman, was going back to the cave where there was some sort of deer carcass in the cave.
See?
She wanted the best cave. She wanted the one who could build the best fire.
Wanted the biggest
She
carcass.
wasn't looking for the guy outside, trying to hunt a rabbit around without a loincloth.
She wanted the full carcass.
But for some reason here, you should be feel ashamed, or you should consider a toxic masculinity, patronizing man, if you just want to be treated like a woman.
I think sometimes it's overcomplicated. I mean, God made us our own types of creatures, and at the end of the day, we are very primal. That's why sometimes we like the ones that are a little bit taller, have the wider shoulders, that bring home the bacon. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's probably why, I mean, you guys can talk about the traits you look for as women. and
Exactly.
I'm sure you guys admire women
Booty.
We want to know that, please.
You had to go there. You had so many gentleman points. You were building up so many.
But Ginger, we are primal as well.
I know.
And-
That's true.
And so you wanted the carcasses in the big cave. We looked at different features, right, Matt?
Yeah, I don't go to the gym for myself,
Right? That's
Wow. Very, very base take.
I
Clip
like that. I like that.
Well, no, I did.
See?
I grew up as a tomboy, and so when I found out that all you had to do to give yourselves curves was go to this place, lift some things for a certain amount every day, it's just like, well, this is the leg pack. This is it. This is easy.
This is the healthy way to get curves. Other ways, mozzarella and peas.
No, see, she works out. I'm impressed by this. It does not matter, what happens the night before, if she has work that day. I mean, Ginger works out every single day.
And it shows in
I'm
her beautiful.
impressed. It is a really impressive thing. It's an element of discipline.
Well, I also think it's great because we've had a life where we're on the road. There's a lot of variables, and it's something you can control. And I'm thankful to have a body that can move. Not everyone can.
Exactly.
And so I just feel an obligation. Also, just too, I mean, once you start doing it, the endorphins you get from it, the way you feel in clothes, the way that you can walk upstairs without taking a break, it's lovely. And
It's your
attracts my
mind.
How many
husband.
flights of
Your
stairs do you
mind.
think you could go up without taking a break?
Oh, well, it depends. If it was a competition with someone, doesn't matter. I'd do them all. If it was just kind of to get up some,
I mean, do you think you could do like 20 flights of stairs?
like I said, if it was a competition, yeah.
Matt, how about you?
Definitely.
Me? I mean, like 2?
Two.
No, you could do 4. I've seen you do.
Okay, so my office was on the 7th floor of the Longworth building in Congress, and I could get to the top of that, but you know, it was work. You used to make me do it, and then if my
Well,
staff
we-
would get too puffy, she would make them do it, which definitely was like an HR violation.
Yeah, apparently
But-
when I tried to encourage his staff to have like health and wellness challenges, like not taking the elevator, it was a little bit frowned upon because I guess it's not really in the HR rules. But I'm just trying to
I
make
told the
America
ethics
beautiful
committee
again.
to put it on my tab.
So what do you guys look in a woman besides that?
Oh, great
This could
question.
get dangerous.
No.
want
This
to know
people
that.
want to know this. People listen.
They do.
People are going to watch this and say, "How did the two of them end up with the two of them?"
Exactly.
And that they're not going to care about our politics.
I get it all the time.
Yeah,
I'm used
they're
to
just
it.
going to be like, "All right, those two clearly got some warts on them." And they ended up with 10s, and so they need to tell us this. So it's actually a great question.
Exactly.
What do you think, George?
Look, first and foremost, working together, I think, is critical to any amazing, successful relationship. I think if people have separate lives completely and they don't overlap to some extent, I don't think it can really work for the long term. I know people say like opposites attract. In my experience with her, I think we survived like some of the craziest stuff like in both of our shared lives because we had like a shared vision and we were rowing in the same direction. If she was like in her own career path, I was in mine. She had some interests in what I liked, but not too many, and we were like a little different. I don't think we would have survived. I don't think we'd be together today. So I think like you should find somebody who really shares your values and what you like, and then obviously like physicality, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You have to be sexually attracted to the person that you're with, and that's probably the most important thing initially, right? Because that's like what gains your attention to like a beautiful girl and like what she wears and how she smells and how she makes you feel. But then after that, it's all about rowing in the same direction and having this like mindset where you could conquer the world together. And I think that's what an alpha male, like I think you and I are, we look for in a woman. But what do you think?
That was beautiful.
You see
I
why
need a moment.
you know, I'm so
That
much
was
in
so
love with
beautiful,
him.
Man with
George.
words, yeah.
Yeah.
He made me blush again.
That was, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
I think it's also understanding each other's love languages.
Yeah.
I'm a big acts of service, quality time guy. Ginge, physical touch, words of affirmation,
And gifts.
gifts. Yeah.
But it's good because I think
People are going to take that the wrong way, honey. You're gonna,
No, that's good.
Well, I just feel like when it's the thought that goes into that, and one thing that Matt does every day, every single day, mostly multiple times a day, he will cook for me, and so for him, it's his act of service that he's being
Beautiful.
filled, and it's for me a gift of this delicious meal that I get to smell throughout the day, watch him cook it, take some behind the scenes photos, and just really enjoy. And so having that every day, having that being filled, and
I'm discovering so many similarities between the four of us. The same with George. My favorite moment when he cooks for me. It's like, and he does it. He does it, and he's becoming better than me. He's
he
amazing.
surpassed me.
what's your best dish?
I've been really making a good lamb dish lately. I call it the Greek lamb. I'm ethnically Greek, so it has to be somewhere in that bloodline. We used to survive on lamb in the
So do
mountains.
you get it with like the rosemary, like the Greek lamb? How do you spice it up?
So here's how we do it. Put a little rosemary, a lot of garlic, lemon, olive oil, some pepper and salt. Broil it. Comes out beautiful. Healthy. Broil.
No, you don't bake it off at the end.
Broil
So
it.
you got that.
Wow.
That is a
More-
technique.
it's more moist. It's more moist like that.
Oh! If you can land it, it's crispy on the outside, creamy on the inside.
That's right.
But if you broil it and you are like 200 seconds off, you're screwed. So it's not super forgiving because on broiling. So you must have like the timing down.
I'm telling you, it's like a sixth sense. I see it, and then I have her investigate. I say, Simona,
Do
smell
you
it.
use that weird little thermometer? on the temp?
No, it's just
No.
like a feel. How does it go, Simona? I just say, Simona, eyeball it.
He
We
goes
just
there,
eyeball
he
everything.
tastes it,
I'm the
and he
same.
comes and say, come here, you have to taste it too. So we start, getting
What did I
into
make
that.
you for lunch today, Ginger?
Okay, let's
hear
listen to
this.
that.
Oh, it was this amazing venison. And one of my favorite things about ski season is the venison. And I
Wow.
totally forgot that until I was tasting this amazing venison. He marinated it yesterday. The onions, I can almost taste it. The onions were so sweet. I asked if I was eating a date because it was just caramelized beyond belief. It was incredible.
So did you
It's so
take a
incredible.
course on this, or is this like your instinct? Like for me, I've never taken a course. It's just like I see something. It's like caveman instinct. I put it together. I'm like, I need to satisfy her one way or another. That's the situation.
I'm glad you can cook.
I can do also other things.
When I was 3 years old, I learned that my mother would be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. And so I became her helper in the kitchen. And so she loved to cook, but she couldn't reach the pots and the pans, and she couldn't put the water on to boil. And so I from age 3, I was always just doing things for her, and I kind of kept that all the way through the end of high school. I was, like Ginger said, complete mama's boy. And so she taught me all the little dishes that she knew, and then I would learn how you have to balance the acids and the fats and the sweetness and the spice. And then when I started working, I worked at a little Italian deli in Seaside, Florida. And I always wanted to be back in the kitchen, kind of watching the chefs, how they put stuff together. And actually now, I love the Food Network. I love to watch the Chopped show, and they just have to use random ingredients and put them together. And Ginger had a career before where she was really motivated by ending food waste. And so she would never allow anything to go bad. We had to use everything. And so now the daily exercise is I look in the fridge and I say, all right, what here is going to go bad first? And I grab all those ingredients out and say, what do I make out of this? And I've started with the AI tools as well, where you could take a bunch of ingredients, talk about the tools that you have, and have it give you a bunch of options on how to do it. And then you can, pick and choose, weave in your own knowledge. That's actually how AI works best for me, not as an end product, but as part of the musing, right? Give me some concepts, give me some ideas, fill in some blanks for me, but then ultimately put my touch on it. And so I had some beautiful venison tenderloin strips, and I cut those into steaks, and then overnight I marinated it in some fresh chopped garlic, fresh chopped parsley and thyme, and then soy sauce and salt, and then took them out. You got to get the meats to room temperature. You can't have them come right out of the fridge and into the oven because it messes with how you cook them, and getting them at the right temp. Seared them off, and in the oven, perfect medium rare. Did not even need a sauce. And the onions and garlic that had been part of the marinade caramelized in the cooking process.
I just want to say, this really makes me want to watch a show, like Cooking with Matt and George, and me and Ginger being on the tasting table,
I'll get a good basket of ingredients.
right?
Yeah, I would want hard ones, Yeah, bring us monkey brain.
Yeah, Matt. I mean, because all of our life is political. It's okay, it's fine, but people need to know the real Matt and Ginger. They need to know the real George. And what better way than how you cook?
So Ginger posts my some of the stuff I make online, and somebody commented the other day, is really? At a time like this? You're cooking? And I'm like, fuck you. Everybody needs hobbies. Even when I was in Congress, I would reserve some part of my time for a mental frivolity. And that may have, a fair criticism might be, well, every waking moment, there's another constituent file you could be working. There's another bill, another amendment you could be reviewing. But for me, at least, there had to be a baseball game I would watch, or a Florida State Seminole podcast I would want to listen to, or a great album to enjoy, to really get me on my game. But that is what I miss most about it, is that there was always a virtuous fight. And in media, which we both do now, there kind of is too.
Yeah.
You know, which there's always somebody's story or a perspective that you can lend a little credence to that is worthy. But the value you find in, like when that lady gets her Social Security check that she hadn't been getting because somebody messed something up at the office and you resolved that, that was way more meaningful than the paycheck or the title or anything like that. I love that stuff. Ginger saw me do that stuff all the time.
You did it. Well, it also, too, like you said, it was your love language. If it's acts of service and every day, you get the opportunity to have, not only a volume of them, but the stories that impact people, not just that day or that week or that year, but I mean, we would run into people that came back after years saying, oh my gosh, do you know that, this thing you did or this bill you passed or this recommendation you made changed our lives. And
those were the marijuana users because I passed Florida's first marijuana law. So they were always very appreciative.
Yeah.
I kid.
No, it is, you have some good
I
stories
learned
there,
politics
too.
from my dad. My dad right now is actually an elected state senator, but had been on the school board and really an incredible man. And he told me the stories about President Andrew Jackson. And Trump is a lot of ways Andrew Jackson more than he is any other president. And Jackson had Big Wheel of Cheese Day, where he would go out on the White House lawn and he would demand all the White House staff go out there. And he would put out a giant wheel of cheese. And any American who had any gripe about anything could show up, have a piece of cheese, and talk to somebody in the government about what bothered them. And it tickled the populism of the nation in a really productive way. And so my dad, whether he was on the school board or whether he was in the state senate, he would say, well, son, this is the day of the month. It's my Big Wheel of Cheese Day. And anybody who has called or written or stopped by, no matter how strange or unattainable their issue is, they get 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes with their senator. And, I tried to reflect that in my own service where you didn't have to be some connected person or have somebody who was somebody vouch for you. You could just be a taxpayer and show up and say, hey, I got a problem and I vote for you, so you should probably help me solve it.
And I think that's why you were so effective. You were incredibly effective. You weren't taking super PAC money. You weren't taking lobbyist money. Actually, I think you were one of the only members of Congress, former members of Congress that had that policy.
I didn't even take it from Lev Parnas and Igor Furman. They tried. These boys showed up in Florida, and they're giving money to Ron DeSantis. They're giving money to every politician they could find. And hello, this is Lev and Igor from, Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they were dressed like Miami Vice extras. And they're like, we'd really like to donate to your campaign. I was like, what you fellas could do that would mean a lot more? Pray for me. And left it at that.
That's really, you are so passionate and effective in every fight you embraced. And I remember with George when we were going through all this lawfare and targeting and the Russia hoax broke through. And we were watching the Mueller testimony in front of Congress, and I saw only one congressman was actually doing the pertinent questions. As somebody who lived the story, I knew which question had to be made. And we were watching you with hope. And I really hope into the fact that even a congressman can really represent you, can work up there to give you justice. And that's probably one of the moments in which I trusted most American politics, and a moment in which I mistrust all institutions. So part of me, when you were the first pick for as Attorney General by the great President Donald Trump, and we were actually celebrating to his choice, I know that you can have huge influence in different ways, but a part of me is frustrated about seeing you out of the political scene. Do you think you would come back at some point?
Well, I don't know. I know that God has a plan for all of us, and when we try to overcook the sauce, it doesn't typically go well. I too would have loved to have been Attorney General, and it doesn't sting so hard for me, mostly because such a dear personal friend of mine is able to serve in that role. If it had been some schmuck or some stiff, I would have really been disappointed that I wouldn't have been able to achieve confirmation for the president. Pam Bondi and I were elected the same year to public life. We've been allies from the very beginning. We started working together on animal cruelty legislation as far back as 2010, and our careers have tracked in one way or the other. So that makes the medicine go down a lot sweeter for me. But the politics is a season of life.
Yes.
I don't know that it should be your whole life.
I agree.
And when I ran for office when I was 26 years old and was elected, I didn't really think I would be doing it in my 40s. I thought, this is something I'll do in my 20s, maybe a little bit of my 30s, but then I'll go off to my business goals or my goals in law or my goals in family and life. And I probably stayed a little longer at the dance than I would have initially planned, because I was so driven by the work. And I honestly felt like I couldn't abandon people when Joe Biden was president. How could you possibly walk out on your constituents when they're like, hey, this guy is making my money not worth anything, and he's letting all the illegals in and making them live next door while trying to shut down the gun store down the block? You can't abandon people in battle, but with the election of President Trump, with someone like Pam Bondi as Attorney General, with this exquisite cabinet he's built, the pressure for me to be in the scene is diminished. And it may arise again under different circumstances. But for now, I really am appreciating what James Madison said, one of our great founding fathers, that the highest position in America is not that of congressman or senator or even president, it's citizen. The citizen has such power in this country, and we're able to utilize it now more probably than even in the time of Madison, with our ability to be interconnected and organized. And so that's kind of what I'm excited about.
And actually, you hit really a point that I used to make. Politics is not a job, it's a parenthesis of your life you dedicate to public service. So when you see professional runners, there is something off about it.
Well, I worried. I was always so critical of career politicians, but I was elected at 26 and I was 42 and I was still there, and I started to wonder, when I might become one, and I didn't want to. And so now I've got a career in media. I love making the Matt Gaetz show every night on One America News at 9 o'clock. And it gives me a chance to talk to interesting people and to help share their stories.
And I want to thank you both, because as a citizen now I'm speaking, what you did for representing people like me, like George in Congress, was outstanding. So your legacy is for us.
Well, I always wonder, because I was in Congress, it's hard to conceptualize how people think about the institution. Like when you think about congressman or congresswoman, is there like a specific vision of that you have?
Yes.
Mine's tainted, but I'd love to hear yours and George's.
I used to work for the European Union, so at European Parliament. I studied in Brussels and graduated there, and part of my studies were in Brussels. And so my experience of politicians were people driven by one main interest, and was keeping their seat and their power. Yeah. So I never felt there were a genuine will to represent people. It might sound cliche, but that's why people like you really made an impression on me, because I knew you knew with competence what you were talking about, and you were challenging this narrative with passion and competence. So for me, people like you are what politicians and congressmen are meant to be, which means representative of the people, while the career politician are just people that most of the time, unfortunately, cares about the status quo.
Well, and you said something so important.
It's beautiful.
They just care about keeping their power.
Yes.
And I saw that, and I just sort of thought after a while, to what end? Bro, you did all this work to get here just to keep a job where you have to do the bidding of other people who give you money? Like, you've seen it because you interact with so many of these people. You interacted with their spouses. Like, do you think Simone's critique was a fair one?
Well, I think there was so much sadness behind the scenes, because, we talk about this all the time. The way that families are destroyed, marriages are destroyed, kids really never get kind of the attention that they probably, should from their parent because, they demand this schedule. And you see people not only putting the power and ambition for themselves, but you see the destruction that it causes, to people around them. And that was just, it was sad to see. And it was interesting though, when everything is so centralized in Washington, it was almost like you walked in to just like a scene in the movie and you're just thinking, you're thinking that someone will break character because it's so outlandish, just how everyone is kind of focused on something that I think to people with just good core, character and values would see as just completely toxic. But they've kind of normalized it up there. And I mean, yeah, it's hard to see the volume of that happening over and over, and the damage that it does kind of behind the scenes.
You are completely genuine, authentic. You come across, I feel it and I see it. And it's refreshing to hear it from you. And behind a great man, there is always a great woman. This is a cliche. But when you met Ginger, how her perspectives on the world and her advices influence your policy making in Congress?
Ginger is such a deeply kind person. And the notion of cruelty or inequity bristles her, and I think it deepened my perspective on many things. To see just her endless empathy and care, and it was a very compelling feature of her personality. But it also informed my public service.
So sweet, love.
I think couples, we change each other when we met. We always take something from. I became much tougher since I met him.
Yeah, how did you change?
So you just became tougher?
I became tougher. I said I can take it. Only God gives you what you can handle. And
I think I was much more influenced. One, because if you're with someone that is at the top of their game in a very impressive level of the game. Seeing what that was, especially being a young woman. I mean, I was in my mid-20s. So one thing I got to learn a lot more about myself and my friends, the ones that were there for me, the ones that were not. That was very telling. And I'm actually really thankful for that because it's, you spend so much time investing in those around you and you want to be the right ones. And from the very beginning, some people that might have even had totally different politics, but we're just good human beings, said, great, I don't even have, before I even have met Matt, if you like him and, you make that decision, I'm totally here for you no matter what you're going through, no matter what headlines are happening. But also gave a great perspective, I think, on, being in the middle of politics, obviously having...
Well, Ginger didn't believe that there was fake news. She said, honey, there is no fake news.
Yeah.
That's just what people say
That's just what
who don't like what's
Is
written
the fake
about
news
them.
in the room with us now, Matt?
I thought it was
what do you
a
think
bad,
about that now,
Yeah,
honey?
I thought it was a bad argument. I thought if someone didn't have an argument, they said, oh, no, that's just fake news. And so it wasn't until articles would come out, especially things, about me or my family that weren't true because I lived them. And I would go to Matt's communications director and said, can you call the internet and tell them that this is not right? I can give you the facts on where these are wrong. And everyone just laughed.
basically, until you become the fake news.
Yeah.
And that's something we all experience.
Explain
here.
that, Simona, because this is we're like a parallel dimension right now with what's
That's such a good way to say it.
with what you're saying, and I know Simona has a response because I know I definitely do. But
Well, I woke up to headlines that I forged my passport, that I was actually Russian born, and that my parents in Italy were actors, and these kind of things. And some anchors from ABC News went to visit my parents in my hometown, Caserta, which is nearby Procida, where I know you have been. So my parents were completely ingenuous. They just received them. They showed my birth certificate, my pictures as a child. And the only thing they could come up with is actually, her hair naturally are a little bit darker.
They got you.
They got me so bad, right? So I thought, okay, but they never said anything about, we were basically slandering this girl. We are destroying her reputation. We made her unemployable. I mean, I'm an attorney in Italy. I work for the European Parliament. Nobody knows any of that. They just portray me as this foolish character that doesn't look like me, my background, and anything. So it was kind of brutal, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I tried to defend myself. And the most I defend myself, people said, if she's screaming loud, it's because she's guilty. No, I'm screaming
win.
loud because I'm not. So I agree with you. I was not coming from this world. And when I jumped to this world, and I am only just a little part of it. Can you imagine what he had to endure? Like, I am just like his extension, right? I was just a useful person in that
No,
moment.
the people who love you actually wear it harder than you do. Because I've been in, but like my dad was in politics,
Totally,
and,
Matt.
and when people would criticize him, I hated it.
Yeah.
And when people criticize me, it rolls off me like water off the back of a duck. But the people who love you, who are around you, it's so much harder on the family, which is why if you are in the public light, you have to have a family who is tough and resilient.
And one thing I'll say about this is you really learn who you can trust, who's always had your back, who didn't have your back, who the opportunists were, and who you could really cherish as a family, friends, and it's like a significant partner or your significant other. Like I said in the beginning, you have to row in the right direction. You can't be distanced or separated by any distractions or else you won't survive, especially in a political family, which by de facto, we're all political families. That's just how, no matter what, even we could be the coolest people, we could love to cook, people know us because of politics. And that's what it is. And it's a tough game and you need to have a strong partner. And I would argue, Matt, that without them, we wouldn't be who we are today.
Totally.
That's absolutely correct. I want to ask one last question to you, Matt. You're kind of on, let's say, the outside right now. I view you as a power broker, a kingmaker, if you will. Florida, right now, your home state, I know you're a California guy right now, but you're the quintessential Florida man, is like the winter White House at Mar-a-Lago. A lot of key players are coming out of Florida right now. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Pam Bondi, your good friend, who is Attorney General. You have Ron DeSantis, the governor, and his wife, and all the situation that's going on right there. So the question I have is, in Florida right now, who are you supporting as like a local politician? And do you see any local Florida politicians having a future at the national level, including potentially President of the United States?
Well, we have a tremendous bench in Florida.
Yeah.
Because it is a state that has benefited from unified Republican control since the mid-90s. Jeb Bush, for all of his flaws, built a Republican Party in Florida that was durable and vertically integrated and has never been beaten. I mean, even though Jeb got beat, the party he built in Florida produced people like Ron DeSantis and I mean, Anna Paulina Luna would probably be the person in the state who inspires us the most right now in government. I'm such a huge fan of hers. And we're a term limit state, which creates a lot of churn. And that is so healthy. It's so different from Washington. And so every 8 years, you got a new group of people in the House, in the Senate, in the cabinet, in the governor's mansion. And it's also a place that's really invested in attracting the creative class. And California used to be really good at that. When I was growing up, California was where all the beautiful, creative, smart people, I mean, OJ was here doing his thing. And now so much of that has left this state, and it's really finding a home in my home, in Florida. And I think that portends really well for our economic future, and the politics portend well for our spiritual future, our cultural future. And I'm really not worried about Florida. I think we're gonna be fine. But even the great choices we've made will not protect us if we lose the country. And that's why I ran for Congress initially, because I thought, well, I've dedicated my life to making this state awesome. It is. And now if the dollar becomes worthless, if we become embroiled in wars forever, if we're doing the bidding of special interests here and foreign interests abroad, then we'll lose America. Florida will not be a sufficient life raft at that time. So I'm just as optimistic as ever about the Sunshine State, and I miss her every day. I am not there.
That's beautiful. I feel like somehow we are, the young girls looking at us now, they're getting really scared if they have a crush on a political figure. So,
They should be, by the way. It's so funny because there are so many people.
That's such an observation.
So many.
I mean, I think we are scaring them very much. I said, what I have to go through.
Well, the problem is
It
it
is
can
the
scare them,
truth.
but it won't stop them. It won't stop them because, as Henry Kissinger said, I mean, power's an aphrodisiac.
True.
Let's go back to our first conversation. We're all kind of primal at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So if you see someone climbing this ladder, you think, well, they've
See?
they've got some edge. They're going places, and so if I can run fast enough, maybe we can run together.
Live the adventure.
Yes, that is such a keen observation.
Live that adventure. I love that. I think we've all had an incredible adventure, and I think it's going to continue. And I think in this golden era that we're living in, under the tutelage of President Trump, and with champions like both of you and
Yes.
powerhouses like both of you, I think you're both inspirational at the personal level. I think this conversation really highlighted what great people you are, how you really love each other, and just that cordialness and that warmth that many people don't understand, and what we have gotten a chance to learn about both of you by spending some time with you, and just how incredibly smart both of you are, and we really see great things in the future for both of you, and we're really grateful that you spent some time here with us tonight. So thank you so much.
Thanks for letting us come over and drink your hooch.
Happy to be here. Let's do it again.